Welcome to another exciting episode. In this lesson, we are going to have a complete tutorial on communication skills. We will cover communication, time management, reading skills, paragraphing and transitions, and then the writing process. What is communication? Communication is the act of exchanging information. Can information be exchanged when there is only one party involved? No. This means that the communication process is a two-way process. There must be two people or two parties before communication takes place. There must be a sender of the message and then the receiver of the message. Communication can be a learned skill. This is because we were all born with the ability to talk, but not everyone can communicate effectively. Therefore, in order to communicate, you must learn the skill or the art of communication. It is also cyclical. This is because it involves the exchanging of information between two parties. So whilst one party receives the information, the other party sends the information, and the one that receives the information will give feedback to show that communication has occurred. In order for communication to take place, there must be some things that should be present, and these are what we call the elements of communication. Now, the communication cycle model that you see over here was developed by Shannon and Weaver. It explains the elements of communication. Let us look at the first element of communication, that is the sender. This is the person who sends the message. So we can say that the person who conveys his thoughts will be a sender. What about the message? What does it mean? The message here includes the ideas, feelings, suggestions, and anything that is in the mind of this particular sender. But before the message can be sent, it must be put in a very correct format for the receiver to understand. That is where encoding comes in. Encoding is the element of communication whereby messages are converted into communication symbols. This sender will convert the message, his thoughts, his feelings or ideas into words, pictures, gestures, or symbols. This is what we call the encoding. Now, after the message has been encoded, it must pass through a channel. Now, what is the meaning of channel in the communication process? This is the medium through which the message is sent. The medium can be in a written form, face-to-face, through a telephone, letter, or the internet. So the channel over here is the medium through which the sender will send the encoded message. Before the recipient or the receiver receives the encoded message, the receiver or the recipient must do something, and that is the next element. The recipient must decode. What is the meaning of decoding? This means that the receiver is going to translate the encoded message into an effective language which can be understood by him. So, in order to understand the encoded message of this particular sender, the receiver must also decode the words and the symbols that he has received in order to make meaning of them. This process of making meaning of the symbols which were encoded by the sender is what we call the decoding. So it is the sender who does the encoding, and it is the recipient or the receiver who also decodes. Therefore, we can conclude by saying that the recipient is the one who receives the message. But the cycle will not be complete because this is a linear cycle. It shows that communication flows in only one direction. So what completes the communication cycle? It is this particular element over here. We call it the feedback. So the feedback is when the receiver reacts to the message. The feedback will be the reaction of the recipient to the message. Whether it is a positive reaction or a negative reaction, it shows that the recipient has received the message. Feedback is the element that shows that effective communication has taken place. This is what we mean by elements of communication: the sender, the message, encoding, channel, decoding, receiver, and feedback. Before the recipient is able to give feedback, then the recipient must have good listening skills. The recipient must listen attentively to the information being shared. Therefore, we can say that sending the message is as important as listening to the message, because it will ensure that effective feedback is given to complete the cycle. We've talked about all these elements, but we didn't talk about noise. What is noise in the communication process? Noise can also be called barriers of communication. It is anything that disturbs effective communication and affects interpretation of a message. When there is noise in communication, it can affect communication negatively. The message will not be understood by the recipient. There are different kinds of barriers that can affect effective communication. Let us look at some of these. The first one is physical noise. What is physical noise? This is the disturbances from external sources. If you look closely at this particular picture, we can see that two ladies are exchanging information peacefully, but there is one guy who is screaming behind them, and this is an example of physical noise because it is being caused by something or someone that is outside the conversation. The person is an external source of noise. Any other noise that occurs in the background will also be classified under physical noise. For example, if there is a sound of rain, it is physical noise. If there are thunderstorms, then we have physical noise. If someone is playing loud music at the back, it is an example of physical noise. If there is a construction work at the background, then it is physical noise. Now, physical noise can also be technologically based. If you are scrolling down a Facebook page and then there is a pop-up, it is not the information you are looking for, so it becomes a physical noise. Also, if there are bright lights, it can affect how someone perceives information. So bright lights can also be described as a physical noise. If there is overcrowding in a particular place, then we are going to classify overcrowding as physical noise because it is going to affect communication between people. All other forms of technological failure or technical noise can also be classified under physical noise. They include faulty microphone, poor internet, software glitches, and then muted speaker. If any of these occurs, then we have a disturbance caused from an external source. So that is physical noise. Any noise that is caused by an external source. Which other type of communication barrier do we have? We have the physiological noise. This is the disturbances from something within the receiver's body. So we can say it is caused by biological factors. So what are some of the things that can affect your body which will also in turn affect effective communication? Some include when you are medically unfit. Let's say you are sick or suffering from headache. Whatever goes on within your body which causes disturbances will be a biological factor. So for example, if there is hearing impairment, you suffer from hearing incapabilities, we will say that it is a physiological noise. It happens within your body. If you are fatigued, then we will say that it is a physiological noise. Now, all forms of illness, whether it is headache, whether it is malaria or whatever, it will affect how you receive information from others. So, it is a form of noise. If you are very hungry, hunger can also be a form of physiological noise. If you are under any medications, it can also affect how you exchange information with others and how you receive information. So any noise that occurs within your body will be discussed as a physiological noise, and then the ones that occur outside your body from external sources our physical noise. When someone mumbles, the person cannot talk fluently. It is also classified as a physiological noise. Talking too fast can also be a biological factor, so it is a physiological noise. Let us look at the next type of noise, which is the psychological noise. These are the internal distractions in thoughts and emotions. So anything that happens within your mind or your emotions which affect how you perceive information can be classified as a psychological noise. It happens within the mind of the person. For example, we can see that this boy is daydreaming. Whilst in a classroom, he is thinking about a fancy car. Therefore, we can say that in his mind, he has occupied it with noise, which will affect his ability to receive the information being exchanged in the classroom. So what are some examples of psychological noise? We have daydreaming, as we have explained. We have prejudice or biases. If you have prejudice against someone, a preconceived idea about something, it will affect how you receive information from that source. Also, if you are sad, it is a psychological and emotional well-being of the individual. It will be classified as a psychological noise. If you don't trust the person giving the information, then it is also going to affect communication. So lack of trust is also a psychological noise. If you are bored or you are not in a good mood, it will also affect the exchange of information. It is a psychological noise. So psychological noise happens within the mind of the individual or the emotions of the individual. What about semantic noise? When we say semantics, then we are talking about meaning. So where words are not mutually understood or different interpretations of meaning occur, then we can say that it is semantic noise. For example, we can see someone from Asia talking to someone from Africa. Here, there can be semantic noise when the person speaking does not speak in a language which the other person will understand. For example, language differences can be classified as semantic noise. If you use ambiguous words, it will be semantic noise. If you use slangs, it will be semantic noise. If there is specific jargon or technical terms being used while the other party does not understand, it will be classified as semantic noise. If you use overly complex vocabulary, then it is also semantic noise. Others cannot understand you, and if they also use complex vocabulary that you can't also understand, it will affect communication. If you talk in an accent or a regional dialect which other people cannot hear clearly, it is also going to affect communication. All these will be classified as a semantic noise. These are what we call barriers of effective communication. Now let's move on to talk about the types of communication. What are the types? Basically, we have two main types of communication. They are verbal and non-verbal communication. Let's take the first one. What is verbal communication? This is the communication that involves the use of words or visuals, whether it is written or spoken. So the key word over here is the use of words. So whether you write those words as a message or you speak it out, it is verbal communication. The use of words or visuals. For example, we can see that there is a conversation over here, and it is a face-to-face conversation. They are exchanging information using words. This is an example of verbal communication. In the next picture, we can see that he is delivering a speech. Therefore, he is making use of words. We will call it verbal communication. In this one, the person is talking over phone. Obviously, he is going to make use of words. We will call it verbal communication. Over here, this person is not talking, but rather the person is sending a text or reading a text. So emailing or sending text messages can also be called verbal communication because we are going to make use of words. If you watch the television or listen to the radio, the presenters usually use words to communicate. Therefore, this can also be an example of verbal communication. So in verbal communication, what you have to avoid is using a monotone voice. If someone uses a monotone voice, it means that the person talks in the same voice without a change in intonation or stress. Therefore, it will reduce how happily the other party will receive the information. So it will impact the message negatively. So you shouldn't speak in a monotone voice whenever you are talking to people. You need to try to use different intonations to make your messages clearer. What about nonverbal communication? If we use words in verbal communication, then nonverbal communication will be the exchange of information without the use of written or spoken words. This means that nonverbal communication is vague. It lacks words. But you must be careful. If you over-rely on nonverbal communication, it is going to lead to misinterpretation of your messages. This is because the kind of nonverbal cues that you use in your country will be different from what is being used in other countries. So without context, nonverbal messages will become ambiguous. Everyone can interpret it differently. What are the types of nonverbal communication? Look at this. This is a hand gesture. Therefore, if you communicate using your body through hand gestures, it is also a form of nonverbal communication because you are not using words. Now, if we communicate with our body this way, then we call it kinesics, exchanging information through body movements, facial expressions, or gestures. So what are some examples of kinesics? Smiling, nodding, frowning, crossing your arms, raising your eyebrows, rolling your eyes, pointing, and eye contact. These are making use of the body. Therefore, we call it kinesics, exchanging information through body language. The next type of nonverbal communication is haptics. What is the meaning of haptics? If you exchange information or convey messages through the use of touch, it is called haptics. For example, if you shake someone's hand, then it is going to be considered as haptics. If you hug, hold hands, pat on the back of someone, give high five, a gentle tap or kisses, they are all forms of haptics. So over here, we can see that there is contact, there is a hug. Therefore, we are using touch to convey messages. So hugging someone can also send a message to the person or other people nearby. If you shake someone's hand, as in the form of a business transaction, it also sends a message. If you give a firm handshake like this one, it means that you are confident and also very professional in your dealings. The next type of nonverbal communication is personal appearance or objectives. How you present yourself physically can also send messages. It is a form of nonverbal communication. Look at this man. If you were asked to describe him or tell probably what he is involved in, what would you say about him? What about this person? Look at the two pictures carefully. It is the same person. However, we will say that there are two different personalities because of how both are dressed. This means that physical appearance can also send messages to people even before you open your mouth to talk. The next form of nonverbal communication is what we call proximics. What is proximics? This refers to the use of space or distance in communication. We have intimate distance. This is the distance which is used for conversations between family members, romantic partners, or very close friends. So it involves whispering, hugging, kissing, and holding a baby. This form of communication is for people who are very close, like a mother and a child. So the space between individuals can also send a message. It is a form of communication, and that is what we call proximics. Also, there is personal distance. It is used for conversations with friends or acquaintances. So if you are chatting with a friend, Speaking to someone you work with, greeting a neighbor, or talking with your baba, you will maintain a personal distance and not an intimate distance. So if a teacher has intimate distance with students, it will be described as inappropriate. Personal distance is useful when we are talking with people who are just our friends. We also maintain social distance whenever there are small group interactions, for example, during a group meeting or sitting around a dinner table. What about public distance? This is useful for public speaking interactions. For example, we maintain public distance during lectures, when we are giving a speech, when performers are on stage, or when a preacher is at the church delivering sermons. So all these are forms of proximics. The next form of nonverbal communication is chronemics. What is the meaning of chronemics? This is how time affects communication. For example, punctuality can send a message to other people about how organized you are. Also, if you spend less time or more time with others, it can also send a message to them, whether you value them or do not value them. Response time can also be classified as a form of chronemics. If someone sends you a message and you delay in responding to the person, it sends the person a message about your personality. Speaking time can also be a form of chronemics. If you speak too fast, it sends a message to your audience. The next form of nonverbal communication is what we call paralanguage. What is paralanguage? This is how we say something. So it is not a verbal form of communication. It is emphasizing on how we use the verbal forms. That is what we call paralanguage. The tone of your voice clearly sends a message to your listener. The pitch, the volume, the speed of speaking, and the pauses you make while you are talking can send messages to people. This is what we call paralanguage. Silence is also a form of nonverbal communication. This means that we do not use words. If you maintain silence, it can mean the following. It can mean respect or tension. It can mean agreement, power or control, discomfort or tension, and even shyness. So silence also sends messages to others. Let us solve these questions. What element indicates that the message in the communication process is understood by both parties? Clearly, it is feedback. 2. Which type of noise is caused by prejudice or emotional reactions? Psychological noise. Syntax is a nonverbal form of communication. It is false. What are the nonverbal forms? They are the kinesics, the haptics, the proximics, the chronemics. Syntax is not part. Fatigue can cause which kind of noise? It is physiological noise. It happens within the individual. The next one. Because of fear of judgment, a student refuses to answer questions in class. What noise is that? So fear of judgment, prejudice. Fear of judgment, prejudice. What noise is that? It is psychological. The next. A student keeps fidgeting nervously while trying to avoid a sensitive topic. This shows that the student is uncomfortable, so it is showing discomfort. Greeting a business partner with firm handshake signifies what? Confidence and professionalism. The linear communication cycle model was developed by Shannon and Weaver. An entrepreneur's use of gestures is confusing her audience. What is probably the problem? The most definite cause is that her gestures are conflicting her verbal message. Whatever she is saying is conflicting the gestures. Sir Victor uses exaggerated hand gestures during a lecture. Which type of nonverbal communication is it? This is kinesics, the use of body language. Due to poor audio quality, participants struggle to listen during a virtual meeting. The noise described is audio quality. Physical noise. The major weakness of Shannon and Weaver's communication cycle model is that they believe communication flows in one direction. Congrats on completing the lesson on communication. Next, we are looking at note-taking and then note-making. Note-taking and note-making. One of these students here is taking notes and one of them is making notes. Which one is taking the notes and which one is making the notes? What is the meaning of note-taking and what is the meaning of note-making? When we say note-taking, it means writing down information as you receive it. So as we can see, the student is in class and then she is writing down what she hears from the teacher. So if you write down information as you receive it, then you are taking notes. So when and where do we take notes? We take notes during a lecture, during a class, during meeting, during a seminar, during an interview, or during a webinar. At all these places, you would have to take notes because obviously there is going to be someone who is talking, and then you write down the information as you hear from the source. So why do we take notes? We take notes to capture key points quickly so that we don't forget them. If you don't want to forget whatever you hear from the lecture, you have to take notes in order to capture the key points quickly so that you don't forget them. What are some features of note-taking? When you take notes, it is done in real time. You write down what you hear. It also involves less planning. You don't have time to structure your notes because the person is talking. It is often abbreviated and messy. Since you don't have enough time to plan, your notes must be abbreviated. You must use shorthand writings to write faster, and then it will make your notes very messy. In order to take notes, you must also have good listening skills and be very attentive because the person is talking whilst you are taking the notes. So that is the meaning of note-taking. Now, what about note-making? This means you are reorganizing the information in your own words after learning from different sources. So here, you don't take the notes while someone is talking. Rather, you are making notes after learning from different sources. So when do we make notes and where do we make notes? We make notes after learning or after reading. Then you organize the ideas that you have read and then make notes on it. You can make notes from textbooks. You can make notes after reading research journals. You can make notes after watching videos or documentaries. You can make notes after reading handouts and slides. You can make notes after solving past exam papers. So, note making is done after reading from different sources. You try to organize the information you have gathered and then put them in meaningful notes. If you do that, then you are making notes and you are not taking notes. So that is the difference. If you take notes, it is real time. You write down what you hear from a source. But if you make notes, it means that you are learning from different sources and you are organizing the information that you've learned. So why do we make notes? We make notes to revise and organize ideas in a meaningful way. So since you have enough time, you can plan in note making. Therefore, you can organize your ideas in meaningful way. You can do that because over here, you take notes very quickly. So you don't have the luxury of time to organize your ideas in a meaningful way. So what do we do when we are making notes? We sometimes summarize what we have learned or paraphrase, meaning write it in our own words. This also involves more planning because you have time to structure your notes. It is often done after a lesson, not during a lesson. It can also involve diagrams since you have time to make diagrams. What are the features of a good note? Let us talk about these features. First of all, it must have clarity. Your notes must be clear in meaning. Also, your notes must not be too wordy. It must be brief. Your notes must also be relevant. It must be useful later on. It should also be accurate, meaning the information that you have put down must be accurate enough. It should also have a logical structure. Your notes must be written accordingly. Now, this is the defining feature of every good note. It should be a reflection of the source. So where did you make your notes from? We should find the information that you have written down from the source where you read from. What are some note-making techniques that you can use? First of all, you can use the outlining. We have charting, mapping, cornell, and boxing. This means that we don't have only one way of making notes. You can use all these methods to make your notes, but it will depend on the purpose for which you are making the notes. For example, if you are making the notes in order to record the information faster, not all of these methods are going to help. If you are making your notes to write examination, some of these methods will not be helpful. So it depends on the purpose for which you are writing the notes. So the outlining is a hierarchical note-making technique. This means that your information will be organized from general to specific. So when you are outlining, you will write your main topic. Starting with a Roman numeral. Then you move on to your subtopic commencing with a capital letter. Then the individual points will take Hindu-Arabic numerals, and then the subpoints will take small letters. Let us have an example. This is a sample. Our main topic has been indicated with a Roman numeral, and it is grammar. What are we doing under grammar? That will be our subtopic. We have to make it capital letter so that it will not be on the same scale as grammar. What are we doing under sentences? That will be the individual points. So you will mark them with the Hindu-Arabic numerals. So here we are treating functional types of sentences. What are the functional types of sentences? That will be our subpoints, and you write them with small letters. This is what we mean by outlining. It is arranged in the form of a hierarchy from general to specific. When do we use this particular note-making technique? It is suitable after reading from textbooks and when you are done with a very long reading. Let us look at the next note-making technique, which is the charting method. This makes use of tables and columns, and it is suitable for comparing or tackling multiple topics at the same time. I hope you've used this method before. If you are treating two or more topics at the same time, you are going to use the charting method. For example, if we want to discuss the differences between note-making and note-taking, we are going to use the charting method. This is because note-making is one topic and note-taking is also another. Therefore, we are going to treat two topics at the same time. This is where charting comes in. We will create two columns, and one column will be for one topic and one column will be for the other topic. If we were treating three topics at the same time, then we will create another column and write the information regarding that topic in that column. This is what is known as the charting method of making notes to treat multiple topics at the same time. What about mapping? Mapping is a visual way of organizing information. It begins with a central idea which branches out to subtopics. Let us see an example. We are saying that mapping is a visual way of organizing information. So this method is suitable for visual learners. Those who always do mind mapping always see the ideas linked visually. So here, our main topic is sentences. We have two main categories of sentences, the functional and the structural. Have you seen how we used branches to link the two categories? This is what we call mapping. It is a visual way of organizing information. Now, what are the sentence types under functional? We used branches to talk about the functional types, and we did same for the structural types. So if you are a visual learner, then this method is the most effective. It will help you to organize your information such that the ideas will be linked visually. The spider diagrams are also similar to this one, and we classify them as mapping. Let us move on to the Cornell note-making system. What is the Cornell note-making system? This note-making technique was developed by professors at the Cornell University. It is a system that organizes notes into 3 sections. What are these sections? Here are the sections we are talking about. First of all, the title is written at the top, and then you create 2 columns. These are the 3 sections. This section, and then the 3rd section. How do we organize information in the Cornell note-making system? First of all, the large area or the large portion will be your note-taking area. So here, whilst you are reading, you can make your notes over here. And after you are done reading, we move on to the queue or the record column. Here is where you write the main ideas from the notes that you took, and then the questions that arise while you were taking your notes. After you are done with the 2 columns, you move on to the last section and then summarize everything that was gathered over here. So you do the summary after writing your main points and the questions from your recall section. So this is the Cornell note-making system. What about the boxing method? Now, as you can see here, we have arranged some boxes. So the boxing is the note-making technique where information is organized into separate boxes. So it will require a lot of what? It will require a lot of space and boxes. So if you do not have enough space, then you can't use this particular technique. So over here, you will create boxes and then organize your ideas. For example, if we are treating sentences, we can write the meaning of sentences and the types over here. If we are focusing on, let's say, the functional types, we are going to write the 4 functional types in separate boxes. So if this is declarative, whatever we write over here should be under declarative. We will do same for the rest of the boxes. This is what we call the boxing method. These are note-making techniques which will help you to organize your information. Let us solve these questions. What is the main purpose of note-making? You can pause the video and then select the right response. Which of the following is the main difference between note-making and then note-taking? What is the defining feature of a good note? What type of note-making method uses a hierarchical structure with Roman numerals and bullet points? Which note-making technique is most suitable for lessons with multiple topics being discussed simultaneously? Pause the video and then try to solve these questions. What is reading? It is the process of understanding symbols or written words. Your ability to understand what has been printed for you in the form of words and symbols is what we call reading. Therefore, these 2 ladies are making meaning of the symbols that they have. So we can conclude that they are reading. If you are unable to make meaning of symbols, then we will say you can't read. We read for different purposes. Sometimes we read for examination purposes, and sometimes we also read for pleasure. Therefore, you should approach reading based on the purpose that you want to read. So we have different reading techniques for different purposes. The first reading technique that we will talk about is what we call skimming. Then we have scanning, close reading, intensive reading, extensive reading, browsing, drifting, and also diving. Let us talk about the first 2. Skimming and scanning. What is skimming? This is a quick reading to get a gist of the text. So you glance through the text to get an idea of what it is about. So when you are doing skimming, you don't read the entire text. You will just glance through it to get an idea of what it is about. So how do you skim if you are not reading the entire text? This is how you do it. You will look at the titles and illustrations. you can also look at the table of contents. If you look at the table of contents, it gives you an idea about what the text is about. If you are reading a voluminous book, then you can check the chapters. The chapters can also give you an idea of what the text is about. If you have a comprehension passage, you can check the topic sentences of each paragraph. It will give you a brief summary of what the text is about. And also, checking the vocabulary or highlighted words in the text can also help you to get an idea of what it is about. Doing all these, you are not reading the entire text. Rather, you are just glancing through it to get an idea, to get a gist of what the text is about. That is the meaning of skimming. What are some advantages? First, it saves time. You are not going to waste time to read from the start to the end. Rather, you are just glancing through the text, so you will finish in no time. This means that it will really save your time whenever you do skimming. It is also effective to help you revise towards exams. But before you do skimming, make sure that you have done close reading of your examination text, else your skimming is not going to be that effective. That is the meaning of skimming. Reading to get a gist of the text. What about scanning? We scan whenever we want to find specific information in a text. You usually scan in comprehension. It is applied when you are answering questions. For example, where did the man come from? Here, you are going to search for specific place. So, searching for specific information, you are not going to read the whole chunk of text that you have. You are just going to focus on the specific information you are trying to find. Therefore, if you are doing scanning, you will be looking for specific dates, specific names, specific place, specific events, or even a specific number. So the keyword over here is specific. When you are doing scanning, you are looking for specific information. It is also a fast reading technique because it will not waste your time. This is effective whenever you are answering questions in comprehension. You search for specific information that answers your question. What is the meaning of close reading? This is the exact opposite of skimming and scanning. It is a reading aimed to examine a text carefully. So over here, you don't just glance through the text or you don't look for specific information. What you do is that you take your time and you read to examine the text carefully. This means that you are going to consider every aspect of the text. For example, you will check spellings, you will check grammar, you will check punctuations, you will check capitalization. You are doing a careful reading of the text in order to do analysis. This is what we mean by close reading. So it is done purposely for analysis. For example, when a literature student closely examines a text to interpret the themes in it, then this person is going to use the close reading technique. The person will consider every aspect of the text in order to come out with the themes that he is looking for. That is the meaning of close reading. Examining a text carefully. What about intensive reading? This is a close reading technique, meaning you are going to examine the text very carefully, but the purpose is what distinguishes intensive reading from close reading. If you do intensive reading, it is a close reading done for academic or professional purposes. So if you read for academic or professional purposes, then you are doing intensive reading. Although it is a close reading because you are going to consider the text carefully. If you are reading for academic purposes, it means that it will require more concentration. You will have to concentrate because if you don't take your time to study well for your examination, then you are going to fail. If you don't take your time when you are studying to teach, you will end up going to the classroom with little information that your students cannot benefit from. So whenever we are reading for examination, we practice intensive reading. When we are reading to teach, we practice intensive reading. So this is a close reading done for academic or professional purposes. But close reading in general is the examination of a text carefully. So it is done purposely for analysis. Let us talk about extensive reading. This is reading widely to enrich your personal knowledge. If you want to get informed about the world around you, sometimes you would have to read a lot. So whenever you read on certain topics, on certain fields, in order to enrich your personal knowledge, then you are doing extensive reading. You are doing extensive reading. So in extensive reading, the concentration will depend on your interest. If you are very interested in what you are reading, then you are going to concentrate much more on your material. But in doing extensive reading, since the purpose is to enrich our personal knowledge, we don't pay close attention to mechanics and then punctuation. We are just reading to enrich our knowledge. What about browsing? This is the reading that we do purposely for pleasure or to improve our language. So just as we see here, browsing is done in a very relaxed way. Sometimes we read to kill boredom. We read for pleasure or just read to improve our language. If you read for those purposes, then you are doing browsing. So in browsing, we don't take notes because we are just reading for pleasure and we don't try to retain the information that we read. This is because we are not to take an exam or to do an analysis or to enrich our knowledge. We are just reading for pleasure. So we don't try to retain the information that we read. What about diving and drifting? Diving is used when revisiting a text you have already read. So if you have indeed read the text, then you can do diving. You cannot do diving when you have not read the text. It is used to revisit a text that you have already read. This means that the information you are going to look for will be fetched directly without reading large portions. If you are very familiar with a text, it is going to save you time to help you find the information that you are looking for. So it is very useful when you are revising for exams. You don't have to read everything because you have already read a text some time ago. So you know where different kinds of information are placed. This is the meaning of diving. Now what about drifting? It is the reading done when you are motivated due to a writer's style. Sometimes we are not motivated enough to read a material that we have. But based on the writer's style, when we get to a point of reading, we will realize that the text will be very interesting. So we go back and then read with much focus this time. Whenever your reading is motivated due to the writer's style, we call it drifting. So it encourages the habit of reading extensively because most writers try to include certain things in their writing style which will catch your attention in order to motivate you to read. If you read based on that, then you are doing drifting. Let us talk about some negative reading habits. You should avoid these habits at all costs. The first one is vocalization or sub-vocalization. What do we mean? Whenever you sub-vocalize or you vocalize, it means that you are reading aloud or silently mouthing words while you are reading. This is not effective. Why? It is going to slow down your reading and it will make comprehension very harder. You will not be able to retain much of the information that you read. So when is vocalization necessary? Only vocalize when you are practicing pronunciation or reading aloud to others. Why do we sometimes feel the urge of vocalizing? This is because of how we were brought up in our culture. Children usually vocalize when they want to impress their peers, and teachers always encourage students to vocalize in order to correct their pronunciation. But as a student, if you are preparing for examination, do not vocalize. It will slow down your reading and you will not understand the information that you are reading. Read silently to obtain much of the information you are reading. That is vocalization. Now what about fixation or fixity gaze? This is staring at one word at a time while reading. When we are reading, we are supposed to train our eyes to scan for group of words and not single words. So if you read by staring at one word at a time, then what you are doing is fixation or fixity gaze. It is a negative reading habit that you need to avoid because it will slow down your reading and make comprehension very hard for you. Regression is the last reading habit we want to talk about. It means going back to reread parts of a text unnecessarily. What causes regression? It is caused by inattention. If you are reading and you are not paying close attention, it will get to a point where you would have to go back to reread parts of the text you have read. It can also be caused by stress or poor reading habits. If these things cause you to go back to reread parts of the text that you have read, then we call it regression. It is different from diving. Diving is done to revise information that we have already read. But for regression, it is a bad reading habit caused by inattention, stress, and poor reading habits, which leads us go back and reread parts of a text. So it will definitely slow down reading. You can avoid regression for minor unfamiliar words. So when you are reading and you come across unfamiliar words, do not just go back to reread them again for understanding. You should just move on with your reading. And when you are done with everything, the understanding even becomes clearer. Let us learn about some study skills. That is the SQ4R method. This is a studying approach and it is not a reading approach. So the reading skills are the skimming, the scanning, and the rest. But for study skills, it is very broad and reading is just part of it. How do we effectively study? If you are someone who always forgets information you've read for your exam, this technique is going to help you. SQ4R is an acronym. The S stands for survey. These are the things that you do before you read. So first of all, you will prepare by reviewing the material. So you will identify the relevant parts that you want to read and then assess the difficulty of the text. So if the text is too difficult, you will approach the reading in a different way. If the text is not that difficult, you will approach it in a different way. So when you are doing survey, you will plan what to read, when to read, and how to study. So these are the things that you will have to do to prepare yourself for the reading stage. That is the first thing you must do whenever you want to study. It is the S component of the SQ4R. What about the Q? It stands for question. You can ask yourself questions before and during reading using class notes, headings, and past questions. Before you start even reading, you can look at some past questions to get a direction of where you should read. You can also check your class notes and ask yourself questions about where you must focus when you are reading. You can ask the questions before and even during your reading stage. Why do you have to do that? It will help you to focus on key areas and also take relevant notes while you are reading. So question stage should not be avoided whenever you want to study effectively. That is the SQ. What about the 4 R's? The first R stands for read. There will be no studying if you don't read. So you have to read the material that you decided to read. We can say that it is the core of studying and it informs questioning and then recalling. It is a very integral part of your studying process. Take your time and then read the material that you decided upon. While reading, make sure you have your questions in mind. It will help you to have a particular purpose while you read. What is the next R? The next R is the recall. This is the part where most students usually skip. It means after reading, you have to summarize or recite what you have read. This will help you to check whether you have retained the information you have read or you have forgotten the information you have read. So how do you summarize or how do you recite? You can do the summary orally. So after reading, take time and orally summarize what you have read. Or you can take a sheet of paper and write what you have read in a form of a summary. Or you can ask yourself questions and then answer them. If you do that, then you are recalling. It will help you to check understanding and then retention of the information. So you would realize that you were not able to retain all the information that you read when you do recalling. So if you recognize that, then the next R is going to be important. That is the revision stage. You will reread the text to correct and then strengthen your recall. So whatever information you forgot during your recall section, you will go back and reread the text in order to correct and then strengthen the information that you've forgotten. What is the last R? This is the reaction. So you can either intellectually critique the ideas and do analysis of what you have read, or you can do application of what you have read. This is when you apply it in real life situations. So when you answer examination questions, you are reacting to whatever you read. If you teach, you are reacting to whatever you studied. So this is the SQ4R method. If you want to study effectively, you must first survey, ask yourself questions, read the material, try practicing on recalling what you have read, then revise the portions that you forgot, and then you react to whatever you studied. This is the SQ4R method. Let us answer some questions on reading skills. Paragraphing and transitions. What is a paragraph? A paragraph is a group of related sentences that develop a single main idea or topic. This means that a paragraph is always centered on one main idea. It helps organize writing and make it clearer to the reader. Every paragraph develops this single idea. For example, if our main idea is about animals, then every sentence in the paragraph must talk about animals. These are the features of a paragraph. Every paragraph must have a topic sentence. This is the sentence that introduces the main idea of the paragraph, and it should be clear and specific. So the topic sentence contains our main idea. For example, if we say that trees give life, if that sentence is our topic sentence, then every other sentence must talk about trees giving life. Therefore, the topic sentence controls the overall idea of the paragraph. Every paragraph must also have supporting sentences. These supporting sentences are going to give details, examples, or explanations that develop the main idea in the topic sentence. So note that a paragraph must have a topic sentence, the sentence that contains the main idea, and it must have supporting sentences. These sentences are going to explain, give examples of the main idea, and then the paragraph should have concluding sentence, the sentence that summarizes the paragraph or links the paragraph to the next idea. Let us look at how these features occur in the paragraph. This is how a paragraph looks like. First of all, it is normally indented. We leave a small space here to mark the beginning of a new paragraph. Now, where is our topic sentence? Our topic sentence is reading every day is important. So all the sentences in this paragraph must talk about the topic sentence. That is, reading every day is important. So we will use the supporting sentences to give examples, explanations, or definitions which will explain our topic sentence. And then we add a concluding sentence to our topic sentence by summarizing whatever we discussed or by linking this paragraph to a new idea. This is what a paragraph looks like. You can have a number of paragraphs in a passage. For example, this is an article. And we can see that it has been arranged in paragraphs. How many paragraphs can you count? 1, 2, 3, 4. So these groups of sentences each contains main ideas. So when you take this paragraph, it contains a topic sentence, and everything here is about that topic sentence. If you take this one, it is also containing another topic sentence. Everything in this paragraph will be about the topic sentence here. So this is the nature of paragraphs. Now that we know the features of a paragraph, let us look at what makes a good paragraph. These are the elements of a good paragraph. What are these elements? First of all, a good paragraph must have unity. This means that all sentences should relate to one main idea expressed in the topic sentence. So if your topic sentence is Kofi is a good boy, every other sentence in that paragraph should relate to the topic sentence. You must talk about things that make Kofi a good boy and not to talk about his bad deeds. So if you write Kofi is wicked, then your paragraph is not going to have unity, because your topic sentence was to talk about the things that make Kofi a good person. That is the unity of a paragraph. All sentences should relate to the main idea. Also, a paragraph should have adequate development. It should be adequately developed. It means that the paragraph should provide enough details, examples or explanations to support the main idea. So you cannot have a paragraph with just one sentence. You must have many sentences that provide details, examples or explanations to support your main idea. And what is the last element of a good paragraph? A good paragraph should have coherence. When we talk about coherence, what do we mean? It means that the ideas in the paragraph should flow logically and be connected using transitions, pronouns, and synonyms. Before your topic sentence and your supporting sentences flow logically or be connected, you must use what we call transitions or pronouns or synonyms. This will help your readers to see how connected your ideas are. So, the act of linking ideas in a paragraph using transitions, pronouns, and synonyms is what we call coherence. How do we use transitions to link ideas in a paragraph? We have different types of transitions. Let us see the first one. Some transitions are used to show agreement, addition, or similarity. Some examples are also, in addition, likewise, moreover, similarly. For example, she loves reading historical fiction. In addition, she enjoys biographies. So without the transitional word or the cohesive device over here, we wouldn't see the connection between this sentence and the previous one. But because of this particular transitional marker, we have been able to connect this sentence to this one. So the ideas are linked by the transition. That is the work of transitions. What other transitions do we have apart from those that add or those that show similarity? We have those that show contrast or opposition. For example, however, on the other hand, although, nevertheless, whereas. For example, I wanted to go out, however, it started raining heavily. So the transitional marker here or the cohesive word here has connected our previous sentence to this one. So whenever you use transitions in your paragraphs, it helps your ideas to be connected or linked. This is what we call coherence, linking the ideas using transitions, pronouns, or synonyms. What other transitions do we have? We have transitions that show cause, condition, or purpose. For example, because, so that, in order to, and many more. For example, in order to succeed, you need to work consistently. Why do you need to work consistently? This is giving a purpose why you should work consistently. So it has linked this part of the sentence to this part of the sentence. Other transitions also give examples or supports or place emphasis. Examples are, for example, for instance, in fact, especially, to emphasize. Let us use some of this in a sentence. Many students enjoy outdoor activities. For example, hiking and cycling are popular. So, for example, over here links this particular sentence to this one by giving details or examples about the activities. Some transitions are also used to show effects, results, or consequence. For example, therefore, thus, as a result, consequently, Hence, he didn't submit the form. Consequently, he missed the deadline. So here, consequently, is being used to give results of he not submitting the form. This is the work of transitions. They are used to link ideas in a sentence together. And whenever we use transitions, then we are ensuring coherence. So these are the elements of a good paragraph. Let us move on to look at the types of paragraphs that we have. We can group paragraphs into two main categories. We can have types of paragraphs by style and types of paragraphs by topic sentence. Let us start with paragraphing by style. We have four types of paragraphs by style. First of all, descriptive paragraphs or descriptive writing. To describe means to paint a picture of scenes, people, animals, objects, feelings, or places. And what do we use to paint a picture of these? We use words. So, describing people, animals, objects, or places is what we refer to as descriptive paragraphs. So, in using descriptive paragraphs, you must make sure that your words that you choose appeal to the sense of touch, smell, sight, taste, hearing, so that your readers can picture whatever you are trying to describe. Now, the next type of paragraph by style is what we call narrative paragraphs or narrative writing. This is the paragraph that tells a story or recounts events, and it is usually in a chronological order. So this means that narrative paragraphs always tell a story. Now, we have two types of these narrative paragraphs. One is that the narrative paragraph can be fictional, which means that it can be imagined, something that has been created by someone. For example, if you are telling a folk tale, then it is a fictional narrative story. It is going to have a plot, how the events are sequentially arranged. It is going to have a setting where it occurred. It is going to have a theme. It is going to have characters, those who play roles in the story. And it is going to have conflicts, disagreements between the characters and other forces. So this is fictional narrative stories. They are imagined or created. Your narrative paragraph can also be non-fictional. These are real events. For example, things that happened in our history. We've talked about two types of paragraphs by style. The one that describes things and the one that tells a story. Now the next one is expository paragraphs. When do we write expository paragraphs? We use expository paragraphs to explain, to define, or to compare ideas. It also includes process and cause-effect writing. So if you explain how something is done, then you are writing expository paragraph. For example, how to prepare my favorite food. Here, you are going to explain, you are going to define, you are going to show the process of preparing food. Therefore, it is an expository paragraph. How to look for a word in the dictionary. You are going to show step-by-step process to look for a word in the dictionary. Expository paragraphs. Now, the last type of paragraphs by style is what we call argumentative writing. Here, you present arguments for or against an idea to persuade the reader. So the main purpose of argumentative writing or persuasive writing is to persuade your audience, is to convince them to agree that what you are saying is right. We have two types. We have fictional arguments. These are normally given to students in school. For example, who is more important between a doctor and a teacher? Here, it is a fictional argument. Examples of non-fictional arguments are parliamentary debates. So, as for parliamentary debates, it is not created by anyone, an issue of national concern. Therefore, it is non-fictional arguments. These are the four types of paragraphs by style. Let us look at the types of paragraphs by topic sentences. Here, it is the position of the topic sentence that determines the name of the paragraph. For example, we have loose or direct paragraph. Loose or direct paragraph has its topic sentence at the beginning. So whenever you have a paragraph where the main idea is stated at the beginning, then it is called a loose or direct paragraph. So the rest of the sentences are going to support the main idea given at the beginning. So take notes: loose or direct, beginning. The second type of paragraphs based on the topic sentence is periodic or suspended. For this paragraph, the topic sentence comes at the end. This means that for this paragraph, it begins with supporting sentences, and then we end the paragraph by bringing our topic sentence. Any kind of paragraph where the topic sentence is written at the end is a periodic or a suspended paragraph. We also have what we call mixed or pivoted paragraph. For this type of paragraph, the topic sentence appears in the middle. Therefore, we would have supporting sentences at the beginning and supporting sentences that follow the main idea in the middle. So that is the mixed or pivoted paragraph. What about emphatic paragraphs? For this one, we have two topic sentences. One is at the beginning and one is at the end for emphasis. If you have a paragraph where the topic sentence at the beginning is restated at the end for emphasis, then we call it emphatic paragraphs. These are the paragraph types by the position of the topic sentence. And the last one is the implied paragraph. As for this paragraph, there is no topic sentence. It means that if you want to identify your main idea, you should look at the supporting sentences given, and then you ask yourself questions about the writer's intent. That will help you to identify your main idea. So in implied paragraphs, there are no direct topic sentences. Let us solve these questions. Some are application questions, which means you need to take your time in order to understand the scenario. For example, a student writes a paragraph about football in Ghana, but includes 3 sentences about cricket in India. Which paragraph element has the students likely violated? Is it coherence, adequate development, unity, or style? Pause the video and go through these questions one after the other. The writing process. What is the writing process? These are the series of steps a writer takes to produce a finished piece of writing. So when you are going to compose an essay, you do not immediately start by writing whatever is in your mind. You need to pass through a series of steps in order to produce a good finished piece of writing. But you have to remember that the writing process is recursive. This means that it is not strictly compulsory to follow this series of steps. The steps can even overlap. Where one writer starts from might be different from where another writer starts from. So this writing process that we are going to discuss is recursive. We have 3 stages of the writing process: the pre-writing stage, the writing stage, and the post-writing stage. The pre-writing stage. In the pre-writing stage, these are the things that a writer must do. First of all, the writer must think of a broad topic. For example, it can be about education, politics, or culture. So as we can see in the picture, the person is thinking about what to write. So pre-writing stage involves the activities that a writer must take part before the writing stage itself. So the first one is to perceive a topic. Then after getting the topic, which is very broad, you must narrow the topic down to a manageable specific idea. So what specifically about education do you want to discuss? What specifically about politics do you want to talk about? You will limit your topic. So you select a topic and then you limit it. The next step is that you should identify the purpose. So why are you even writing this particular composition? Are you writing to inform your readers, to persuade, or to entertain? You must identify your purpose after finding your topic. Then you must know your audience. To whom are you writing? Understand the age of your audience, the interests of the audience, the background of your audience, and then the expectations of your audience. This will help you to tailor the words or the meaning or the themes that you explore in your writing. Next, you have to gather information. After arriving at all these, then you need information to put on paper for your audience. How are you going to gather the information? You can use observation from your surroundings or your environment. Also, you can take part in brainstorming. If you are brainstorming, it means that you are generating ideas for your work. This can be done through questioning. Also, you can read widely to gather information. Once you gather your information, then you need to arrange the information. You need to classify the information. So you organize whatever you gathered into groups. And how are you going to organize your information? You must create an outline. So that is exactly what this person is doing in the picture. He is not writing the composition. Rather, he is creating an outline which he will follow to write this piece of writing. So these are the activities that you must do before the writing stage. That is why we call this stage the pre-writing stage. Know your topic, identify your purpose, know your audience, and then gather information. Put your information in the form of outline, and then you are good to go. So these are activities that we do before the writing stage. You still have to remember that the writing stages or the writing processes are recursive. The fact that you start by perceiving your topic doesn't mean that other writers also start by perceiving a topic. Some can even identify their audience first before they perceive their topic. Let us move on to the next stage of writing, which is the writing stage. At the writing stage, what do? We write. We do just one thing in the writing stage. We just write what we have gathered so far. So first of all, you create your first draft. Why do we call it a draft? This is because what you are writing right now will be revised later on to correct errors. Therefore, this is not the final piece of writing of your composition. We will call it the draft. The activity that you do in the writing stage is drafting. You create your first draft. After creating the draft, make sure that your draft is organized into introduction, where you present your topic, and then your body, where you explain, illustrate, or give examples, and then your draft must also have a conclusion. You will wrap up your ideas logically. So in the writing stage, we write what we brainstormed in the pre-writing stage. What about the last stage of the writing process, which is the post-writing stage? After creating your first draft, what do you have to do? First of all, you must edit your work. How are you going to edit your work? You must evaluate the content in your work. Ask yourself these questions. Does the content support my purpose? Is it interesting and detailed? Also, you will check your organization. Is the flow of the ideas logical? Are ideas well connected? After asking yourself these questions, you will see that there is a need to go back to your writing stage again and then correct all the errors that you made, and also include new ideas that arose when you asked yourself these questions. That is why we say the writing process is recursive. Now let us move on to what you have to do again after editing, checking the content and organization. What you have to do is to proofread. How do you proofread? You need to refine the style. So here, you correct all the grammar errors, you correct spellings, and you correct punctuation errors. After you are done with this, make sure that the sentence structure is also accurate. These are the things that you have to do at the post-writing stage. Immediately after post-writing, you would have to go back to the writing stage and then create the final piece of the draft. Therefore, the writing process is recursive. Pause the video and go through these questions one after the other. The answers will be provided in the comments section.